The studio lights were hotter than usual, or at least that's how it felt once Ricky Gervais took his seat at the curved table. The applause had been polite, even warm, but underneath it ran a current of expectation, the kind that crackled when two worlds were about to collide. Joy Behar smiled the practiced smile of a veteran host, cards stacked neatly in front of her, chin lifted with the confidence of someone who had steered thousands of conversations and survived every storm. Ricky leaned back, one ankle resting over his knee, hands folded loosely, eyes scanning the audience with a look that suggested he'd already clocked every reaction before it happened. The conversation began innocently enough. Comedy. Free speech. The state of satire in a world that felt permanently offended. Ricky answered with his usual dry wit, tossing off remarks that earned laughter and a few sharp intakes of breath. Joy nodded, interjecting now and then, guiding the rhythm. At first, it felt like any other lively segment, two strong personalities dancing around ideas, circling each other with words instead of weapons. Then Joy tilted her head, eyes narrowing just slightly, and shifted the tone. Some people, she said, tapping her cards for emphasis, would say your comedy punches down. That it hides cruelty behind jokes and calls it honesty. A ripple moved through the audience. Ricky didn't answer right away. He smiled, not wide, not friendly, more like someone appreciating a familiar tune. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, and for a moment, the room held its breath. I've heard that, he said calmly. Mostly from people who confuse being offended with being harmed. Joy raised an eyebrow. So you're saying there's no responsibility? That comedians can say anything and hide behind, it's just a joke. The word, responsibility, hung in the air, heavy and loaded. Ricky's smile faded, replaced by something sharper, more focused. He glanced at the audience, then back at Joy. No, he said, I'm saying responsibility doesn't belong to the most sensitive person in the room. It belongs to intent, context, and truth. Joy leaned in now, sensing blood, or maybe just good television. Truth according to you, she shot back. A millionaire comedian who doesn't have to deal with the consequences. That did it. The shift was subtle, but unmistakable. Ricky straightened in his chair, hands unclasping, his voice lowering instead of rising. Consequences, he repeated, like angry tweets, like people who've never watched a full set deciding what I mean. Those consequences. Joy opened her mouth, but Ricky continued, not louder, just firmer. Real consequences, he said, are when people lose jobs, freedom, or safety because someone decided words are violence when actual violence exists. The audience murmured. One of the co-hosts glanced between them, unsure whether to jump in or let it burn. Joy crossed her arms, the smile gone now. You're deflecting, she said. You joke about groups that are already marginalized. Ricky nodded slowly, as if conceding a point, but only halfway. I joke about everyone, he replied. That's equality. The moment you say one group is off limits, you're not protecting them, you're infantilizing them. Joy shook her head. That's easy to say when you're not the one being targeted. Ricky's eyes flashed, not with anger, but with precision. That's easy to say when you assume intent without listening, he said. Comedy isn't a policy. It's a mirror. And sometimes people don't like what they see. The tension was now unmistakable. Even the laughter had dried up, replaced by an attentive silence. Cameras zoomed in, catching every twitch, every breath. Joy adjusted her glasses, clearly irritated. So you're the brave, truth teller, she said. And anyone who criticizes you just doesn't get it. Ricky chuckled softly, shaking his head. No, I'm a comedian. I tell jokes. You're the one turning it into a moral tribunal. A few audience members clapped, quickly hushed by the weight of the moment. Joy's voice sharpened. This isn't a tribunal. It's accountability. Ricky leaned back again, but this time it wasn't casual, it was controlled. Accountability to whom? He asked. To you. To Twitter. To the loudest person online having a bad day. Joy started to respond, but Ricky lifted a finger, not rudely, just decisively. Let me finish, he said. Because this is the part people always skip. The room went dead quiet. Comedy, Ricky continued, has always upset people. That's not a flaw, it's a feature. If you strip it of risk, you strip it of honesty. And if honesty makes you uncomfortable, maybe that's worth examining instead of censoring. Joy exhaled sharply. So feelings don't matter. They do, Ricky replied instantly. They just don't get veto power over ideas. The words landed like a dropped glass. Sharp. Final. Joy stared at him, lips pressed together, clearly weighing her next move. Around them, the show felt like it had slipped off its usual rails. This was no longer a segment, it was a collision. Joy finally spoke, slower now. You're very confident for someone who claims not to care. Ricky smiled again, but this time there was no humor in it. I care a lot, he said. That's why I won't pretend jokes are the problem when intolerance of thought is. A long pause followed. The director's voice whispered faintly through earpieces. Time stretched. Joy glanced at the camera, then back at Ricky, as if realizing the balance had shifted. We'll have to agree to disagree, she said tightly. Ricky nodded once. That's all I've ever asked for. The applause that followed was louder, uneven, charged. It wasn't clear who it was for, or what it meant. But one thing was certain, this wasn't going to end here.